Welcome to the Legal Interview Project. The Legal Interview Project is a collection of teens that work towards creating a repository of interviews and information on how to get from a junior in high school to a 1L in JD. Today I'm joined by Hillel Adler, a rising 2L at UT Law. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward.
So, it's just as a JD candidate, like as a student, what does your life look like day to day?
Like at the law school, you mean?
At the law school, yeah, like during the semester at the law school, what do you do?
Yeah. So as a 1L, your classes are pretty much determined for you. That's going to be true in pretty much any law school. So, I get up, I go to law school, usually starts at around 9. You'll generally have anywhere from 2 to 4 classes a day spread out throughout the week. Your classes will generally not take that long by themselves. However, you do need to put in a lot of prep to make sure that you're understanding the material or reviewing the material. So while each class is going to be generally around an hour and 5 minutes long or so,
Mhm.
just to comply with credit requirements over the semester, you'll need to spend a few hours like before or after the class to prepare for next class, just doing readings, reviewing, so I'll generally be finished. This past semester, I was usually finished by like midday or something, but I would usually be sticking around the law school just to study, to review. You can think of law school as kind of like a 9 to 5, just for like during the weekdays. You'll be in class for around half of that, but you'll be preparing for law school for the other half by doing readings and reviewing.
What is the class like? You said the classes are prepared. What classes are you taking?
You'll be taking like pretty classes that are pretty basic to like black letter law, things like torts, property, contracts, civil procedure. You'll be taking a class in legal writing every semester so far for your first year, um, and you'll just be learning pretty basic case law and the rationale behind them. You might do like some sort of history of how that subject has evolved, like how torts were interpreted, back in England in the 1800s, and then how that has evolved to current modern law. And then you'll delve a bit into different topics inside that class. Like in torts, you'll learn about negligence, you'll learn about strict liability, you'll learn about products liability, and you'll learn about the history of those doctrines and how they evolved over time and how they're still applicable.
Interesting. What's been your favorite class so far?
Generally, I would say my favorite class was torts. It's
Yeah.
just a super interesting class because you get to read about a lot of different cases. A lot of crazy things have happened as a prerequisite for lawsuits. My professor in constitutional law actually wrote the book for our torts textbook, and he has a habit of seeking out just cases that are interesting to read in terms of just what has happened so as to make the case more interesting. And then I also love the professor who taught torts. She was a fantastic professor.
Wow. What's
So
like an example of one of those cases? Is it like outlandish things or like what's the scenarios?
yeah, it can be outlandish things that have happened. It could be like judges writing certain opinions. My constitutional law professor, he clerked for Justice Posner, who's a very famous legal author and judge. Wrote a lot of cases that have been proven to be very influential. Just the style of writing is very interesting. Um, One of the more outlandish cases involved shipwrecks, where a captain, and the question is whether a captain has a duty to his own crew, and just like things that have happened on that shipwreck, or just just in those cases were pretty interesting.
Yeah. What's the progression from here? You did your 1L year, now your 2L year. You have more choice or is it still like preset for you?
Yeah, definitely in your second year of law school, you have a lot more choices what to do. So for in 2 years, you have to, according to the American Bar Association, you're required to take certain classes, but there's not many of them. You have to take a seminar, you have to take a course in constitutional history, constitutional law. You have to take a professional responsibility, but that's a few classes that you have 4 semesters to knock out of. So you can, and there's a wide breadth of classes to take in various topics across the law. You can go into intellectual property, you can go into more into litigation focused stuff or transactional focused stuff. There's a lot of choice what to do once you get to your second year. It can be a bit overwhelming at times, but there's ways to deal with that.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with like a 300-page reading load?
There is a lot of reading. definitely. I think the best way to deal with that is to set precise goals, and then just try to stick to them as much as you can. Always have, a way to relax, something to decompress. You can go out on the weekends, you can spend time with friends, you can go to coffee shops and study there with friends. I think that helps a lot. There's going to be a lot of reading and it's not going to be easy, but if you set manageable goals and keep hang out with friends and have some sort of way to relax yourself, you won't burn out.
What's been your like favorite topics, or torts is your favorite class? Do you see yourself going into that type of law, or what's been your favorite topic so far?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go into a torts focus law. That would be like more of a litigation focus.
Mhm.
Personally, I'm very interested in renewable energy. And so I would like to work in deals like a transactional focus and deals that focus on, financing things like windmill farms or transmission agreements for solar energy, things like that. That's what I'm mostly interested in right now.
Wow, how'd you get into renewable energy?
Yeah, so I work at a law firm and they have a very good practice group that focuses on what's called project infrastructure, which is essentially just financing different projects. These can be anywhere from like a hospital, or public infrastructure like highways, or the government will be entering into agreements with contractors, and you can represent either side, honestly. And so there's one of the attorneys there focuses exclusively on renewable energy because he's also very into renewable energy. And once I heard that was possible, I was like, perfect for me because I'd like to worry about the environment a bit, and while simultaneously working in a law firm and being able to help advance renewable energy is something that's honestly a perfect fit for me.
That's very cool. I guess taking a step back, really a few years, how did you get into like wanting to pursue law school?
So honestly, it was a bit of a later decision for me. I honestly
Mhm.
decided that I wanted to go into law school probably closer to the end of my senior year in undergrad. It was definitely a switch. I'd always been somewhat interested in law. My brother is an attorney. He went to Fordham University in New York, and now he works in a small law firm in Williamsburg. So I've always been interested in the law somewhat, but it wasn't my chosen career path until fairly recently, like relatively recently.
Wow, what did you want to do beforehand?
I was interested. I majored in television, radio, and emerging media, which was more on the production creative side.
Mhm.
That always appealed to me, like the choice of being creative about what you do and having a choice in like what you create. It did appeal to me, but I'm closer to the end. I decided it wasn't for me.
Okay, yeah. Where did you go to university?
So for undergrad, I went to CUNY Brooklyn College back in New York, and I decided to go to UT Law.
What were some factors behind that choice? Because I imagine that UT Law is a bit warmer than New York.
It was a really big change. Yeah, all things considered. I was looking to kind of get out of New York for a bit. I wanted to explore a bit because I had mostly just stayed in New York for most of my life. It was a choice between really a couple universities: University of Minnesota, University of Texas. And I just think that the opportunities you get at the University of Texas is just, it dwarfs pretty much anything else, especially relative to the cost. UT Law is fantastic in terms of tuition costs. Cost of living is also pretty good, especially compared to New York. And just the people I met here, honestly, was probably the biggest factor in choosing UT Law. They were amazing people. I loved the professors. I loved, the other students I had met. Yeah, the other admitted students I had met when I came to visit, and really just sealed the deal. And I haven't looked back since. It was definitely the right choice.
Wow, very cool. I guess at UT Law, other than the classes themselves, what type of opportunities are there for students?
There's tons of opportunities. UT. I was as an anecdote. I was talking to another intern at where I work, and she mentioned that they have around 4 journals. Just as an aside, UT Law probably has 3 times that amount. So you can get involved in journals where you edit footnotes, you can contribute, you can get real life experience. It looks great on your resume. You can get involved in organizations. There are tons of organizations. There's some of the bigger ones which revolve around like business law, board of advocates for litigation. You get involved in the oil and gas journal. So you can get involved in organizations, in journals, and there's just tons of networking opportunities because UT Law has a massive reach in alumni. You'll be assigned if you want, you'll get a mentor who's graduated attorney, and that's a great source of advice.
Mhm.
And generally, the university just looks after its own. There's a lot of opportunities.
Very cool. Do you find that it's like a small university in a larger one, or is it like really integrated into the UT atmosphere?
It's definitely a smaller university among a bigger one. The campus is not that far from the mainstream campus, but it's still off, and it's still off the main campus. And it's around a 10-minute walk to get to the main campus, or at least parts of the main campus, which is obviously massive.
Yeah.
But we have our own library, we have our own facilities. I generally study in the law school. Um, in the Texas heat, it's not a walk that I'm willing to brave just to get into the undergrad campus, but it's definitely more of its own little thing.
I get that. What was the application process like? What was the LSAT like? How did all that go for you?
Yeah, so once I graduated from undergrad, I decided to take somewhat of a gap year to study for the LSAT and then work on applications and so on. I graduated in June 2023, and then I immediately began studying for the LSAT. I went into a program that helped me study. I spent a few months studying for the LSAT. I took it in October, and then I began sending out applications. Um, there was Once I was accepted, obviously I had to work on essays, your personal essay, you have to work on your resume, you send in all your paperwork, and then if you're accepted, they'll invite you to take a look at the university where they'll have a couple of days of programming where you can come in, tour the law school,
Mhm.
and just meet students who are there and meet some professors and just get a look at what the law school is like.
Very cool. And
Mhm.
after you want to do environmental law, how are you sort of positioning yourself to go out into the legal field doing environmental law?
Yeah, I mean, it's not strictly speaking environmental law. It's more
Mhm.
just that I would like to take a positive stance towards the environment and do
Yeah.
something that would help. And to that extent, I'm going to work on renewable energy. So I wouldn't say it's strictly speaking environmental law. It's more like looking over contracts and regulatory affairs and negotiating with opposing counsel and opposing clients. Uh, Handling your own clients as well. It's more about like financing and infrastructure than it is strictly speaking environmental law. I would say, which is a different beast. Yeah.
Yeah. So like towards your collegiate career, you're looking to be in like TV and movies, right? Like that world.
That's what I was planning on
Yeah. And then
originally.
like could you just expand on what made you really make that distinction and say that this isn't for me? And then did law kind of pop up or did you really find out that you were wanting to go to law anyway?
Yeah, there were a few reasons. Obviously, there's a very basic one, which is I wanted a more stable career, which you'll definitely find as a lawyer, probably, and definitely at UT Law. You have some great opportunities, but there is more than that that made me choose law specifically. One of them is that I think the practice of law is definitely appeals to a more serious profession. Like when you go into a courtroom, right? You can't. Uh, you're in front of a judge who you owe like a duty to be serious, to be solemn, to be
Yeah.
accurate. You can't mess around in front of a judge. That appeals to me. It's a very serious business. Also, when I was in my undergrad, I took a fair amount of journalism courses, and I found that like journalists talk about the things that lawyers are directly involved with.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, you're on the front lines, you're negotiating contracts, you're helping, draft policies. You can get involved in so many different things directly. As a journalist, you talk about it. You can produce, you can do various things about it, but a lawyer is directly involved in what's happening. And that appealed to me as well. So it was just a confluence of really just a bunch of these different factors. Also, my brother was a lawyer, and I talked to him about it, and he likes it, he loves it. So it really just stars aligned, I think, for me. And so far, it's been working out, which I'm very grateful for.
So that hands-on action, like, does that make you wanna go into trial courts, or are you more looking at, like, appellate courts or whatever it depends on, like, the issue or the case, what court system would you want to work in?
Um, to me, I think if I would go into like litigation, I would
Mhm.
probably want to do appellate. I think they're very different. Obviously, trial is, a bit more about showmanship and persuading a jury, whereas appellate is more obviously you're appealing to a judge. And so it's more strictly speaking on the law, it's just black letter law. You're applying how to apply the law. As a trial judge, you get to argue about the facts and try to persuade a jury and make your case more sympathetic and undermine opposing case just by attacking their credibility or whatever it is. As an appellate lawyer, it's definitely a lot more strictly speaking about your own interpretation and analysis of the law. So if I would go into litigation, I would probably rather be an appellate lawyer.
Okay, and going into like if you were to go into contractual law, do you have any like how do you write a contract? Are there like templates online? Like what is the process? What's your legal writing process?
Yeah, so the thing about like contractual law or transactional law, it's very different from litigation. Litigation, you have to write your own law. You have to write your own paper, right? Obviously, and if you use someone else's, that's a serious accusation of plagiarism, right? That's highly
Yeah.
unethical. As in transactional, you are encouraged to use other people's work because you look at a contract, and if it worked for them, it'll work for you. What's essential is that you follow the regulations and you represent your client to the best interest, right?
Mhm.
So you are encouraged to use templates. Obviously, each one is going to be different because all deals are different, so you have to adjust them. But a lot of there's legal resources online you can use as a template for your own contract. A lot of companies will have their own like past precedent that they used, which will be a little bit more personalized to their own company. So you're encouraged to use those. You can even pull from a random deal. That's also which I have been doing actually. Funny you should say
Yeah.
that.
So how do
Yeah.
you adjust like I guess how do you read the fine print and make sure that you're adjusting everything properly to the deal? Is it just a lot of careful reading and writing?
It's definitely a lot of careful reading. I think that as, if someone who has 1 year of law school behind them and not much practical experience, they know that, and so they're not being like, oh, here's a $1 billion deal, write up this contract. My work is going to be reviewed if I get to deal with the substantive stuff. It comes with a lot of careful reading, comes with a lot of hard work, and it comes with experience. You get to know like which clauses matter. What are the key phrases that you need to look out for. From what I've seen, looking at shadowing like other attorneys, more experienced lawyers, they'll definitely like know they'll like scan a paragraph and they'll be like, oh, I see these 3 words are the key. We have to change. We have to push back on that. So once you've handled enough contracts, you'll definitely get to know what's important, what counts, and what you have to fight.
What about negotiations? Have you been in many legal negotiations over contracts yet or not really?
I've sat in on a couple of
Yeah.
negotiations. They're definitely very cordial, very polite. On occasions, like attorneys will mute themselves and be like, aha, and I knew that was happening, or they'll push back more. They'll be a little more blunt when they're muted, but definitely face to face, if they're face to face or, there's direct communication, everyone's very cordial, very polite, and, oh, I'll have to push back on this or something, but the real like back and forth happens, I think, when I send you a contract, my version of it, and you'll mark it up and you'll say, I can't do this, I have to do this, and you'll send it back. And then you'll meet and try to work that out those differences, essentially.
Very cool. So not like suits where people are like throwing mugs and stuff at each other.
If I see a thrown mug, I'll send you an email. I haven't seen that
Okay,
yet.
yeah, we'll reform the video. We'll say that there'll be like a split cut and it'll be me in like 2 years in the future. It happened,
With a
guys.
little scar from having a mug thrown at you.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I hope not.
I don't know. What about clients? Like, are clients usually at the contractual negotiations?
Um, I haven't sat in on many and any clients on any ones where the client is involved. However, it definitely happens like clients will fly the attorneys out because I work in Houston
Mhm.
and a lot of the deals I'm working on are either in New York or DC. A lot of times clients will fly out key lawyers to meet with them and to go over, what their position is, what their key negotiating points are. So definitely there are like at the more important meetings, the clients will come, but like there are many, many more meetings before the super important ones that go over smaller stuff. And then if there are big ones that they can't come to an agreement with, then maybe there might be an in-person negotiation, maybe in New York or in DC, where the client will come and the attorneys will come, and it'll be a several day process where they meet a couple times, to hammer out the big points. But before that, the attorneys will meet by themselves.
Oh, and you said you're interning at a place that deals with getting funding for projects, right? Like that's the department.
That's one of the practice groups of the office there. Yeah.
Okay. What's the legal issues like? Why would you want lawyers to be there when you're spending, I don't know, like when you're spending money on a new building or on a new hospital? Why do you need lawyers there?
Well, there's a lot of, like, let's say the infrastructure that the infrastructure that I'm working on, right? Environmental law, like, and things that are worried about, because I'm worried about the environment, like windmill farms. There's a lot of law. There's a lot of concern for the environmental impact of these windmill farms. For example, they have to conform with state and federal regulations concerning like which animals are going to be impacted. And so if you don't have a legal background, you're not going to go into like pore over these statutes and these regulations by yourself and understand, oh, we're required to give this and this warning to the federal government that this might happen. And if it does happen, we're required to do this. So there's just a lot of legalese and regulatory guidance that the companies themselves who know how to build a farm don't necessarily know how to comply with, right? They're engineers maybe, or they're businessmen.
Yeah,
But when it comes to negotiating and reading contracts about, what happens if, a storm hits the windmill farm, who's responsible for that? Then that's where attorneys come in and negotiate those kind of points.
for sure. What do you find like technological advances in law? How do you find different tools being like helping or hurting the legal industry?
Yeah, so, well, the first point about that is that in order to do research, you used to have to just go into case law, like books, like physical books, and draw out. There used to be massive volumes and endless amounts of physical printouts of case law. That's no longer the case, thankfully. There are legal online repositories of cases, which
Mhm.
generally you'll use. So I'm thankful for that, you don't have to do research by hand anymore. But you did mention AI before, and that is a very, very big one, especially in the legal industry. My own personal belief is I'm a little skeptical of using AI, but it's definitely been embraced by certain different law firms and even some universities. You can use it to help you in your research. You can use it to draft a template, and I think it can be useful. You just have to be very careful because there have been cases where lawyers have used AI to write briefs or motions to submit to judges, and the AI just made up cases. And the judge found that, and those lawyers got sanctioned pretty hard. So AI can be a useful tool. Definitely, that's one technological advancement to count in. But definitely, I would recommend some caution and definitely review, verify everything that the AI says.
Yeah. Have you participated in many like moot court mock trials, like different competitions at UT Law, or like not so far in your 1L?
So at UT Law, thankfully, even in your 1L, you definitely can. There are a lot of mock trial and moot court opportunities. Personally, I don't think I'm going to litigation, so I haven't done that many. I did do one moot court competition, very satisfying. It was good. I enjoyed it. But I think that I'm going more away from the litigation side, so I would not be arguing in court that much. But there are definitely a lot of opportunities in UT Law for you to take advantage of to get some experience to work with other students.
Interesting. Do you have any tips for moot court? A lot of the population is going to be watching these videos are a part of different moot court leagues for high school. So, do you have any advice for moot court?
Um, Honestly, they've probably done more than me.
Yeah.
I would say just practice, practice, practice. I tend to I might stumble over my own words if I haven't reviewed it enough. So, if you have a friend or even by yourself, practice how you're going to say it, what you're going to say, what the right phrases to use, even terms, inflections, and voices. Just make sure that you know what you're talking about before going in to argue.
Yeah. So you're focused more on the contractual side of law. Are
Mhm.
you looking more at publishing in legal reviews or like different law journals, or what are you like? are you looking at publishing?
Well, I am joining a journal this semester. It's
Yeah.
a Texas Journal of Civil Liberties and Civil Rights. I think it's a fantastic journal. I'm not doing law review, but if I did law review, generally the role of law students is less to publish their own articles and more to work on editing articles that are published by academics. There is some room, definitely, I think, to publish as a student, but generally, when you join a journal in law school, you'll be working on editing footnotes, citations, and making sure that they accurately reflect what the author is saying. So I will be working on that a little, but as a contractual side, the transactional side, you definitely don't work in citations as much. So
Mhm.
I'm more so joining the Civil Liberties Journal just because I care about civil liberties and I want to be involved in a journal than it is for my career. That's something more that to be litigation focused, definitely.
Very cool. And I guess, what advice do you have for people, really anyone before JD? They could be like in second grade who are considering law and like, probably not second grade, but people who are thinking about law, they might be wanting to go to law school, but they're not sure about it. What advice do you have for them?
I think the best advice, honestly, would be to just reach out to a lawyer or a law student if they might not have someone in their lives. But I think talking to someone who has firsthand experience would definitely be helpful. Just what to expect from law school, what to expect as a lawyer, because like you brought up a couple of times, you mentioned Suits. It's not very accurate, and even some of the more accurate shows are probably not that accurate. I know Suits is obviously heavily dramatized, but some of the others, even like Better Call Saul or other legal shows, might not be completely accurate. So just reach out to a lawyer or a law student. Everyone that I've spoken to as a prospective law student, like I was trying to connect with other law students and lawyers, they've all been super helpful. They want to help other people come into the legal profession. So I think talking to people who have direct experience, who know what it's like to be in your shoes, like looking to get into law recently or not, I think would definitely be a great source of knowledge just to understand what the challenges are and what it's going to be like when you get there. So having someone to talk to, a mentor or something, is probably the best thing for you.
How do you reach out? Like, is there any tips that you would have to how to build a network of those people?
You can go on LinkedIn, you can message someone, you can find their email and just cold email them. I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
Um, I know once you're in law school, it's definitely a bit easier, but before law school, I think you could just like go to a firm, Google a firm name, find a freshman attorney, a younger attorney who probably has more time than a senior in the city you want to practice, and reach out via email. They might not have time to meet in person, but they can meet via Zoom, they can meet for a call, and maybe they will have time in person. I think generally speaking, everyone that I've spoken to has been eager to help, which is really nice.
Yeah. Okay. Any last words, for people watching who are like in this category?
In law school or in undergrad.
In an undergrad. Yeah.
It's worth it. I mean, I love it. It's a lot of work, but I have not looked back. I have. I think coming to law school was the best decision I made in my life. It's fantastic. It's engaging. It's interesting. You'll meet some fantastic people who are also looking to meet other people. So you'll have a community. I say go for it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.